So that last topic we just talked about was quite meaty. I feel like we need to talk about the next part of it.
Okay.
So where do you think that schools go next with this, where being compliant with contact?
So two things I want to say at this point from a social work perspective, which it's interesting. I believe that a lot of you DSL safeguarders in education are actual the family support workers that we had 15 years ago, or social work assistants we had 15 years ago. You're going above and beyond working with that client group where you've only had, I've had a 3-year degree in it. You've either had 2 day, a 1 day or 2 day training, etc. On top of your degrees, education, blah, blah, blah. But one thing I can definitely say is the buzzwords in this conversation would be professional curiosity, disguised compliance, and a courageous conversation.
Right.
So the courageous conversation, I quote that via Professor Claudia Bernard, who is from the University of Goldsmith, and I get that word from her. She uses it a lot in her talks, and she does talk about inclusion diversity work and generally, even a lot of work in affluent neglect. She did that research. But these are the 3 words that we use a lot in our professionalism, in the sense of when we do in our professional capacity have to challenge because we are curious and doubt. It really empowers us to do that. And I don't think DSLs, because Kixie says DSLs have to refer, and this is where it's a bit confusing. DSLs under the new role of the DSL in a new amended version, and it always has said this, by the way, but DSLs have to refer cases of any suspicions of child abuse to the police or social care. So when you look at that model, that one line, it would mean your job is to pick up the phone and ask for advice or make a referral. Okay. So this bit we're talking about, what leads you up to, because when you look at Kixie, they've amended the flowchart. It's bigger, more boxes, and in that, by the training you've done, you've told staff to inform me of any concerns I have about a child, and now you as a DSL have to make that decision. And this is why we're having this conversation about professional curiosity, because do you, in speaking to the parent, believe what they've told you? How can you prove that?
That's the not? Prove word is hard.
Because what you can't do, unlike I can, because of my profession, I can go to their home in my day job, in the sense of a social worker, a local authority. I can look in their fridge if I doubt them. I can ask them, I had a case where a parent put a child in another school but refused to give me the name. And I said, okay, well, if you don't tell me, I'll have no choice but to report that child missing. And on the 11th hour, they gave me the details of the school. And even then the school didn't exist. So the point was he was lying. It was just some, some random address. And I had the power and status to do that in my day job, which teachers don't.
No.
Okay.
But to get proof, so I've done the phone call before where you go, I'm really worried about this child. And they'll say, so what evidence have you got? Well, why don't you make another phone call? And they'll always bounce back things to you. I get that they're really busy and they would love you to be able to come up with that proof. And once you've got that proof, they are brilliant. But a lot of the time they won't do anything until you've given them the proof. And so you kind of sit there thinking, it's just a sixth sense. I don't really know what's going on. And then after a while, you realize that you're becoming a little bit
desensitized.
And you suddenly think, well, at what point, what is my threshold? Because my threshold is very different to other people's. And you start to panic that your threshold is not getting anywhere near as high as perhaps it should be. I've got one friend who always thinks that I always think of the worst case scenario. And that's scary that my brain thinks like that now. But was it like that 2 years ago, 5 years ago? No.
But that worst scenario, though, Kerry, is think the unthinkable. Because in thinking the unthinkable, because I was in a school the other day, in an independent school, and I was doing safe recruitment training, but interestingly enough, they then saw my reality in my day job is that I see that a lot. And therefore that is a reality for me where they hardly saw it. So what they learned from that was, my God, it happens more than I thought. And I think that's why in your think the unthinkable model, that is a good, I think, concept to have, because you're never going to minimize your decision making, and therefore you're more likely to challenge because you doubt rather than believe. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Because I mean, one could argue what we've learned from the current situation is, you know, like you said, can I speak to your child? No. Child sleeping. Okay, so how can do I believe you in that? Am I so suspicious now that I'm going to call the police after this call and let 101 know that I'm really concerned because the house was really quiet? Yes, the child was sleeping, but I doubt the parents were saying. So that's where I suppose what we're learning is you can go back and don't forget, and I always said this, you know families much better than a random stranger being a police officer, the random social worker who's never known that family. So you're more likely to understand the detail, the dynamics, the systems in that, you know, compared to the person who's just going to be told, okay. And with those cases we had, one could argue that was exactly the situation, wasn't it? This person didn't know the dynamics of that family. And schools don't know the dynamics, because when child comes to school, you speak to parents, they're going to put on their Sunday best.
Yeah, they are,
in the sense,
and some of them are really clever. Some of them are really clever with it. Yeah.
To the point where when it comes to my land, in social care land, we then know that we get all the ugly details. So when you go to a case conference, you hear the police talk about things, you hear the professionals talking about things. It's like the same family. You know. So just be mindful of that's telling us there's things we don't know about our lovely families.
One thing I found quite useful, I find that I've got too much going on, I'm worried about dropping it, is I've noticed that I can, on some of my computer softwares, so if I phoned at 10 o'clock and the child was asleep, then I can put a little reminder into the computer program for me to phone at 2 o'clock or the next day at a different time if I'm phoning, if I'm not quite sure. And I can actually set the program to ping me, and it goes, don't phone at 10 o'clock today, phone at 2 o'clock today, or phone. And it helps me, because otherwise, if they are a child that sleeps, they're going to sleep about the same time every day. I mean, as a mum, we always used to put them down. So I've noticed that but I'm having to think, right, so how am I going to try and catch them off guard? And that's where my brain's going.
Good. And off guard is good, because we have to catch these people out. So disguised compliance is when they tell you something to satisfy you in what you're asking them, when actually they're not telling you the truth. You know, they misdirect you. They then turn it about you. Well, you didn't call me back, rather than how's your child? Do you understand? Or I'm busy, I'm in a meeting now. So there's always a distraction, rather than, and we learned that originally from Victoria Climbié, didn't we, with the housing, to Baby P, you know, and it's dressed up in a lot of things, and it takes a lot of challenge and boldness, to be honest, to because you are challenging an adult and a person who should be believed. So
and you want to believe them.
You do, but there's a part of your brain that says,
I know,
until I see it, I don't.
Gosh, that's another 7 minutes gone. That was really good. Thank you.
No problem.